Tenderloins, though, I like to use a fillet knife because it's nice and thin and you can get all the meat out. So, the tenderloin runs from right here the whole way up to the neck, basically. The easiest way to attack these things to get them out of here without wasting a bunch of meat and leaving it on the spine, I'll come up here, feel the spine. I'll try to run my knife in right beside it on whichever side I'm trying to cut out. I'll stick my knife in there, and then I'll hit, there's a little shelf. I'll hit that little shelf, and then I just work my knife straight down that spine and try to follow it as closely as I can, almost like I'm filleting a fish. Make sense?
Yep.
So, I'm following the spine as closely as I can, and I'm feeling the knife point bounce off that shelf. But like I said, I'm staying ultra close to the spine. And once you get down here so far, that shelf will kind of dip off. But as long as you keep that knife really close to the spine, you won't waste any meat.
When you say dip off, you mean like it goes further in depth, or what do you mean?
It goes farther down.
Okay.
Like you can see here, I've got that much, and up here I've got that much.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so the tenderloins get thicker as they go up closer to the neck. Down here, the ends of them are about yay big. Up here, the end of them is about yay big, especially on a deer like this. This deer's going to have some major big loins on it. So, like I said, I'm following that up. Spine. And then this is kind of the part that gets most people. That shelf's up here, right? I'll try to come to the end of that tenderloin and cut across it and then just pull it out. So the end of that loin dips off right here and comes into a little tail just below this flank. You see how that sticks out? I'll just come like this. I'll cut straight across it, like so. And then you can kind of see in there, there's a bunch of connective tissue that holds that to the spine, just like ours. Let's check that out.
So is this where the tenderloin runs? Is all down through there? Is that kind of where it stops?
Right about here where you see that shelf.
Line? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right in there. I mean, not exactly, but roundabout. Once I get a couple inches of this out and start pulling on it, you'll see what I mean. It's kind of hard to explain, so you see, once a little bit of it pops out, you'll be like, alright, I get it. So, all I'm doing is cutting all the little, you can see some little tiny connective tissue. Right there's the shelf I was talking about. See what I mean? That's bone right there. And then, I'll just run my knife down here like this while I press out. And there is no wrong way to do this, depending upon, there's no specific direction to cut. If you find something that works better for you, then do it. But for me, this is how I've always done it. Granted, I don't stand at the side like this, but you know, I know some of you guys are watching and taking videos and stuff, so I don't want to get in the way. But right there, okay, you see where I'm hitting now? I'm hitting that little shelf underneath here, and I'll just cut down along that like so, without cutting through the fish, which are directly underneath this thing in a nutshell. And I can even cut this out so you can see all this is the skin. And if I pull this off here, you can kind of see what I'm doing. I said I like a fillet knife because it's wicked sharp and it's thin, and I can get right up against the spine with it. You don't need one though. If I do one in the woods, I obviously don't carry a fillet knife just for these. You can do it with a regular knife. If I have it hanging up in an environment that I have all my tools though, this is the more efficient route. Make sense? So, right now I'm just filleting that off there so you guys can see what I'm doing. This has no particular purpose other than viewing purposes, me pulling this off here.
So if we weren't here, you wouldn't pull that off.
Nope, I'd just
Okay.
cut straight through.
Okay.
It makes it easier to see what you're doing too, so if you're just starting out, you may want to go that route. So now you can see, since I pulled that skin off, you see how that's pulling away from the spine, kinda?
Yeah.
It's trying to pull out of there. I always tell people wild game meat doesn't get recalled either, so keep that in mind. You know what I mean?
Great point.
Yep. Well, from the time I was old enough to walk, and even before then, I just don't remember. I had a swing set in my yard growing up. And about the time September rolled around, the swings came down and the meat hooks went up, and the meat that was going in my spaghetti and in the crock pot and on my dinner plate was hanging from the swing set I swung from. My family never bought beef growing up. Everybody hunted. Just because that's how it was. And you didn't want to waste money on something you could go out and get yourself. So, see how that just kind of fell out of there once I got both sides of it freed up, and all that was holding it was this little stuff? You can see all the little white lines and tendons in there. The front shoulder kind of rides over top of that. So what you can do is cut that down so that it'll expose it a little better. That makes sense? There we go. There you go. That's the front shoulder. And if I actually cut this off, Anthony, can you do me a favor? Hold up on that. And someone else can do the other side if they want. But what I'm going to do for you guys is cut this front shoulder off so you can see where that loin runs. And you don't need a hatchet to do this. You don't need an axe because all that holds it in there is connective
Can I scoot
tissue.
around you?
Yeah. Actually, if we spin it this way so everyone can see, that might be even better. Someone holds out on this other leg for me, please. Thank you. So, all I'm doing is running this up against the side of the body. And you'll see it'll come right off here. Right there's the top of the shoulder blade, that little bone. I just cut underneath that, like so. There's your front shoulder. Someone could drop that in the cooler. There you go. You see that, the hairy part hanging up?
Like up here?
Yep.
Okay.
That way it's not laying in the bottom, and we'll cut the kneecap off later. So now you can kind of see where that thing runs underneath there a little better. Gives you a more unobstructed view. And once again, I'm just following right along the spine here. And now, I'm not even cutting now, I'm just pulling. And I try to get as much of the tenderloin out of there as I can. And there you go, that's what's considered the prime cut on a deer, by most people. And you'll see I don't have a bunch of hack marks in the back of that from pulling on it and keeping it close to the spine. It's not all hacked up like it was in a sword fight. Questions? And I'll show you all how to butterfly them, what's called butterfly them, when we get done here today. When we get everything off the bone and in the cooler. So there you go, that's where your tenderloin sits on a deer. Anybody want to do the other side? Feel free to.
Sure.
Alright. Might be easier if you cut the front shoulder off first, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
And you can use this, or you can use, and down and around. Like I said, they're super little, and they're not very grainy at all. It's a very weak muscle that, doesn't get used very often. So all I'm doing is cutting around the side of that fish. That makes sense? All I'm doing is cutting around and along the spine behind it. And that actually goes straight up through like that. Give you all some reference. That's where the fish sets.
Okay.
Yeah, and a fillet knife's pretty good for this too, because you're getting really close to the bone. So all I'm doing is following the spine from the back side down and then up to where this runs into the hip. Make sure, get this out of the way. A little better. And feed that to the chickens. They'll be happy. So there's the fish. And I'm just cutting along the back side of the spinal column. If you can kind of see where I got my thumb worked in there. There's not a lot to them. They are pretty flimsy. And they're pretty delicate too. I mean, there's not a lot to them, but they melt in your mouth when you put them in a skillet. Even a big deer like this is only good for about one sandwich, but it'll be one of the best sandwiches you ever had. So that's a fish right there. And I actually missed that very corner of it because they're very difficult to get a hold of. They're not the easiest cut to get out of there clean, but I mean, that looks pretty good.